Oh, welcome back to the channel. This is another video of my Vampire the Masquerade lore set of videos, and this is an overview of the clans, a 101 if you will. Now, your clan is one of the most important things that you will decide for your character in the game. Whilst it won't totally define what you are, it will give you certain gifts of the blood in the form of disciplines, and each clan has a selection of 3 disciplines which are considered their in-clan disciplines and they're easier to learn, and it will also give you a clan weakness. Now, the clans are ancient collections of vampires. Your clan is passed to you from your sire. The sire is the person who created you as a vampire, and from their sire before them, all the way back to the near mythic antediluvians or clan founders, whose blood started to form the more distinct separation of vampires. There were 13 antediluvians and 13 clans were formed. The antediluvians were the grandchildren of Cain, the mythical founder of all vampires, the first, making the antediluvians the 3rd generation. The higher your generation, the weaker your blood is. Beyond 13th generation, you don't really register as a clan member, but a thin blood. The clans find themselves in a few broad alliances, the Camarilla and the Sabbat, and over the course of different editions, a 3rd alliance came more to the front, the Anarchs. There are also the unaligned clans or independents. Of course, as I said at the start, clans don't entirely define who you are, and there are members of each clan that falls out with their general allegiances. So when I'm talking about a clan being in a sect or out, I'm talking about the majority of that clan. Now that's broad brushstrokes of background. However, the background wasn't all fleshed out at the start of the game, and clans became more developed and were fleshed out as the editions went on. This results in most games when new is added, that not all clans were created equally. I sometimes feel that the original 7 clans weren't as equal in terms of power and maybe coolness as the later clans. The later clans all tended to have a unique clan discipline. Certainly 5 of the original 7 all share common disciplines. But you know what? It's something that bugs me, so I think I'm going to do a video talking about that, the disciplines and clans and how all are not made equal. Now, there were 7 clans first written about and developed. In this book, which is a 2nd edition book, and in 1st edition, there were the clans that formed the Camarilla. So I'm going to go through each one in turn, give a wee bit of an overview of each clan, and I'll do all 13 clans. The Bruja or Bruja, pronunciation, everybody pronounces things differently in Vampire. Traditionally, I would call these the Bruja, but I quite like calling them Bruja these days. The Bruja street gangs and rebels seen as riffraff, and as rebels they would often find common cause with members of the Anarchs or be actual members of the Anarchs. And certainly in 5th edition the clan would move over and basically be one of the key clans in the Anarch movement. Now their disciplines are potence, celerity, which give them fearsome combat potential and presence. The supernatural charisma of the street preacher, so they're really tough fighters, but the presence do give them that edge of control and dominance of the streets. Their weakness is quick to anger and close to frenzy. So the artwork here is from the 2nd edition book, but also have the live action book, the Mind's Eye Theatre, and we see real people dressed up representing their clans, which I think is a pretty nice touch. After the Bruja, we have Clan Gangrel. Gangrel are tough outsiders and loners. Fortitude and Protean give the Gangrel immense powers of resilience and the ability to survive in hostile environments. Their weakness sees them gain animalistic features when they frenzy. This animalistic side means they are in tune with their 3rd discipline, animalism, which, as I've discussed in my videos about animalism, isn't just about communing with animals, but controlling and manipulating the beast as well. During the events of the 3rd edition storyline, the Gangrel would leave the Camarilla. They would eventually find more of a home with the Anarchs in 5th edition. Now, this is slightly out of sync with the Mind's Eye Theatre book. because it's arranged Camarilla first going to the Independents. And when this Mind's Eye Theatre book, which is the Laws of the Night, came out, was with revised, so the Gangrel had left the Camarilla at that point. So in the Camarilla, we then have the Clan Malkavian. Now, the Clan Malkavian are often dismissed as madmen and kooks. The clan of seers is alternatively derided and feared. Their weakness is they must take a derangement and character creation. In days gone by, they've been treated well as seers in ancient Roman times. However, for the Middle Ages, they were persecuted for their manias, and then managed to gain some sort of respectability again during Victorian age vampire. They are linked to each other by what they call the cobweb, and will often see things that others don't and pull patterns together. Their disciplines are obfuscate, auspex, and dominate, but because of the Malkavians, it's not as simple as that. In revised edition, in second edition, the Sabbat vampires had dementation, and in Dark Ages, a Dark Age set of games, the Malkavians had dementations. A part of the thing of the Malkavians joining the Camarilla was the respect for the masquerade, so they gained dominate instead of dementation, which was seen as more of a masquerade-friendly power for the Malkavians to wield. In third edition, the revised edition, there was an awakening and the Malkavians all regained dementation again. And dementation is all about controlling other people's derangements and manias. Next comes the Nosferatu. And this is one of my favourite pictures of a clan character in any of the books. The Nosferatu are deformed by the curse of Cain, and their features, upon embrace, will twist into some sort of hideous deformity. This often leads to the Nosferatu hiding from society and will often claim the sewers as their own. They will often band together in elaborate warrens. As outsiders, they seek knowledge and information to make them valuable to the Camarilla and vampire society at large. They possess obfuscate to hide, potence gives them raw strength, and animalism allows them to engage with creatures that don't judge them for their looks. And this is the Mind's Eye Theatre. Nosferatu. Also, we're seeing the clan sigils as well. Next, we come to the Toreador. If the Nosferatu are ugly on the outside, the Toreador are the beautiful people of the vampire world. Artists and posers. They seek out beauty, and their weakness will leave them enraptured by it. They are a clan that has a lot of ties to the mortal world, and they are masters of social engagement and conflict. They are often the linchpin of a domain's high society, both of mortals and vampires. They share most of the same disciplines as the Bruja: speed from celerity and charisma and control through presence. However, they do differ with auspex and use that to truly experience the world around them. After the Toreador come the Tremere. This is a clan of warlocks and wizards. They are a tightly organised, at least by vampire standards, clan. They are powerful and look to their own pyramid of organisation as a major part of their own life. Indeed, their weakness is that they are somewhat beholden and blood bonded to their clan. Now, this is an artificial weakness, and that is because they are an artificial clan. What the Tremere did was claim their immortality from vampires. They were mortal mages, proper mage ascension will workers, and the head of the Tremere himself, claimed the blood of the antediluvian Salot, and through blood magic, thaumaturgy, all the clan gained their disciplines and they hunted down the Salubri. So you can see how, as an artificial clan, they've kind of got an artificial weakness. They have Auspex and dominate, allowing them to understand the world and control. However, their main strength lies with their powerful blood magic known as thaumaturgy. This has multiple different paths, and each level of thaumaturgy also has rituals that can be learned, essentially meaning thaumaturgy combines raw power and versatility. Now, in 5th edition, their main chantry, the head of the clan Tremere, was in Vienna, and that's been wiped out. So their weakness now is being changed as the clan fractured, in that they cannot form blood bonds as easy as other vampires. After the Tremere, we come to the Ventru. The blue bloods of the vampire world. They take up the mantle of leadership and stewardship of the vampire world. The Camarilla is a perfect example of an organisation of their design. A stratified hierarchy where kindred know their place with an ideological purpose, however, that of the masquerade, to maintain the peace and security of all. So the Ventru control vast wealth, and through that direct mortal influence. Their weakness is that their refined palates allow them to only feed from one type of victim. However, the combination of dominate and presence makes them excellent leaders. Fortitude gives them the resilience to stay in the fight long enough to make sure that the combat ends the way they want it to, probably by leaning on their dominate and presence. So those were the clans which were fleshed out in certainly the second ed core book. During second ed, I think it was a player's guide and the player's guide to the Sabbat, we had other clans start to be fleshed out. So we'll start off and we'll talk about the two clans in second edition, which are the La Sombra and the Zamitzi. Now I don't have the app for the La Sombra, Zamitzi and the rest of them, so we'll just rely on the Mind's Eye Theatre book for a bit of eye candy. The La Sombra and the Zamitzi, which form the backbone of the Sabbat, are unique in that they claim to have killed their founders and the founders weren't replaced. You'll see with the Tremere and the Giovanni, they killed clan founders and claimed the clan mantle for themselves. The La Sombra and the Zamitzi claim to have killed their founders and not replaced them. Now, this happened during a time during the Anak Revolt in the Dark Ages, or around the Dark Ages of medieval time. And they ended up forming the Sabbat, which was a sect devoted to overthrowing the control of the antediluvians, whilst the Sabbat also maintained their inhumanity, and are essentially a Gehenna cult, a warrior cult dedicated to destroying the influence of the antediluvians and the antediluvians themselves. So the La Sombra and the Zamitzi value freedom and consider them free from outside control of the antediluvians. The La Sombra are the public leaders of the Sabbat, master manipulators and brokers of power. With origins in the Western Mediterranean, they have affinities with the church and the sea. They are powerful and broke no failure amongst their ranks. They possess the powers of dominate and potence and their unique power of obtenebration. That is the power of shadow manipulation. In V5, they've started to distance themselves from the Sabbat as the Sabbat becomes less useful as it descends into the madness of its true calling, a Gehenna cult. In the Chicago by Night book, there's a plot line of them joining the Camarilla, and that's explored. Their power of obtenebration in V5 has also become one half of the power of oblivion, which they now share with the Hecata, the clan of death. La Sombra disadvantage is that mirrors and reflective surfaces do not show any trace of the La Sombra. A very classical vampire weakness there. Then we come to the Zamitzi. The Zamitzi, I pronounce it Zamitzis, I've heard it Shimashir and all sorts of other pronunciations in between. The Zamitzi are a clan tied to the lands of their birth. This is their weakness, having to sleep in the soil of their homeland. Again, that's another very typical vampire in normal media trope. They tend to be very territorial, and days gone by would rule grand estates. Their traditional homelands are in Eastern Europe. Their powers see them command animals and the beast with animalism, and be aware of their surroundings with auspex. They also wield the fearsome power of vicissitude. the ability to alter and meld flesh. They experiment with their own features, the features of others, and their ghouls, and through this melding of flesh have earned the nickname of fiends. They have very specific servants in the form of Schlachter and Vods, warriors and servants, and have even created ghoul families who are families of ghouls which are self-sustaining and do not require vampire vitae to maintain their ghoul powers. In V5, they lose vicissitude. Vicissitude has gone as a specific discipline and gain protean, and their vicissitude powers are rolled into their protean as amalgam powers. In V5, the clan would also start moving away from the Sabbat and would see them joining with the Anarchs. I'm sure we'll see more of that storyline unfold. Now we come to the Independents. Back in the day, the Independents were very heavily stereotyped. Fortunately, as the game progressed, those stereotypes were challenged, and again I will cover this more in a video on the clans. But let's talk about what they were. The Assamites. The Assamites are from the Middle East, and they're basically Middle Eastern assassins operating from the home base of Alamut. They still revere and serve the antediluvians. Over time, they evolved into judge archetypes as the clan was further fleshed out with the creation of 3 castes: viziers, warriors, and thaumaturgists. Now, the clan has had 2 flaws, the first being a blood curse placed upon them by the Tremere, preventing them from diabolizing other vampires. This was lifted and the clan schismed when a powerful Assamite vampire called Urshugli rose. After that, they became addicted to vampire blood. They believe in diabolizing the unworthy and seek to keep the other children of Cain in order. Their powers were obfuscate celerity, befitting assassins, and quietus, which manipulated the blood into a weapon and had a first level power which fell out of sorts with the rest of the power of quietus, which was creating silence. In V5, we see a part of the clan joining the Camarilla, and quietus becoming blood sorcery for them, with the zone of silence power becoming an obfuscate option at level 1. Next we have the Followers of Set. The Followers of Set are another Eastern clan of vampires, claiming lineage back to the very Set of Egyptian mythology. They see the descendants of Cain as enemies and seek to corrupt and enslave them. Their powers are Obfuscate, Presence, and Serpentis. Serpentis allows a Setite to adopt aspects of the snake and with other powers, even to the ability to remove and store their heart outside of their body in a canoptic jar. The power of Serpentis will be folded into aspects of Protean, which would replace it for them in 5th edition. In 5th edition, they have rebranded themselves the Ministry, and rather than being independent, tend towards being active in the Anarch movement. Next we come to the Giovanni, the clan of death. As I said earlier, this is the second of the usurper clans. There were Venetian necromancers who became embraced into the Cappadocians and would eventually rise up and try to exterminate the Cappadocians. They are organised how you would expect the mafia to organise and have strong ties to organised crime. The Giovanni famously has a strict code of neutrality with the Camarilla lasting 500 years, which in V5 is coming to an end. They have the powers of dominate and potence, as well as necromancy. Necromancy is the power to control wraiths and ghosts. It also includes rituals alongside the main power in the same way that thaumaturgy does. All is not well for the Giovanni. Their 500-year promise is coming to an end, and the myriad of bloodlines of the Cappadocians, which the Giovanni tried to exterminate, have actually all came back together, returned, and united as the clan of death, overthrowing the Giovanni leadership and creating their new clan, the Hecata. Out of all the clans in 5th edition, they have maintained the independence previously held by the Giovanni, and are now in V5 the only truly independent clan. Finally then we come to the Ravnos. This is a clan of travellers. They had a high link to the Roma peoples and were tricksters in the setting. Like most of the independent clans, there were very strong stereotypes of a mortal group of people, often supporting the worst of those stereotypes. The Ravnos, as first presented, was perhaps the most egregious of these. Their weakness was based around an inability to resist crime or a vice. Their clan founder would be killed in the Week of Nightmares towards the end of revised 3rd edition, and the clan all but obliterated. In V5 we see a handful of Ravnos who are able to survive, their clan weakness now being the inability to stay in one place for too long. If they do try and make a permanent haven, then they start taking damage. Their powers were fortitude, animalism and chemistry. Chemistry was a power to create illusions that can ultimately cause harm to victims. Chemistry has been replaced, and I think off the top of my head it's presence that's replaced with, so a lot of their chemistry powers now become amalgam powers of other disciplines. Now a note on bloodlines. There are other groups of vampire out there that share a sanguineous connection. These are called bloodlines and will descend from a common, often strong, ancient vampire. Or, in other cases, they're remnants of former clan, such as the Salubri, who the Tremere took their clan status from, or the Sarmady, Harbingers, or more from the Cappadocians, who would go on and reforge themselves as a Carter. Stranger still are the created bloodlines, such as when the Tremere created the Gargoyles, made to be their soldiers, or the Blood Brothers of the Sabbat, a freakish Tzimisce creation, and many more besides. Famous ones here in the Ropeland book, Samadi, who are kind of voodoo followers. Salubri we talked about, Daughters of Cacophony, which is all about their discipline being based around the ability to create sound. And that's just a sort of more Europe-centric vampire bloodlines. A whole host of Kindred of the East, which is its own product line, and Kindreds of the Ebony Kingdom, how the Curse of Cain was different in Africa. And I will cover those more in another video. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you're having a good time in the world of darkness. I look forward to chatting to you in another video soon. One question I have is, what is your favourite clan? I'm really curious to see what your favourite clan is and why. Mine changes over the years, but I keep coming back to Malkavian as being my favourite clan. But let me know what yours is in the comments, and I look forward to chatting to you about it. Well, that's goodbye for now. Goodbye.